An individual wants to grow, to develop, to move forward. This line with the arrow at the top is about an individual moving forward through life, hopefully in a straight line, but hey, it's never like that, is it? But for the purpose of this, straight line of moving through life. And when we're in a relationship, when we're in a couple's partnership, a marriage together, the ideal is this kind of parallel running where two people are side by side, going through life, doing life well together. And we have different connections coming across to join us. So we talked of values just now. We may have shared aspirations that keep us joined to one another. Communication happening. Now, I've put that in green for a reason. And the reason is that most couples I see, the key issue is that brings them to me because they've got difficulty. The key issue is that they're not communicating. And when we look at disconnection, we'll see why that might be. But communication, oftentimes a couple will come into the room with me and we will have a communication about how to communicate in the room. That's how it starts. How do you communicate well together in here? Never mind what's going on outside the room. Let's establish the way of communicating well, respectfully, hearing one another, being empathic towards one another. So often is the issue that's going on. So if good communication is happening between, that's a strong rung on this growing ladder. We want to honor one another. The Bible is very clear about that. I'm conscious, I can't remember the Bible verse, but talking about husbands and wives, I think, I'm dredging this from my memory here, but I think the first thing that the Bible talks about in that regard is husbands, honor your wives. There's an honoring that needs to go on. Yeah. Shared interests, another rung on the ladder there. And hey, the L word, love. Hopefully there is a connection of love between us. But can you see that with those rungs, and you might add your own rungs to that, your own awareness of things that connect you and your partner, it's a strong structure. It's a ladder. It's a going forward with connection across. And there is space between the connections, and there is difference between you, but there is togetherness by the shared aspects in the middle there. There's an individuality, but there is also an interdependence. And again, I want to emphasize this being turned inwards towards one another, seeing a structure like this for our lives, looking in at it and honoring it and working at it. That's Marriage at Cana's message, isn't it? Marriage takes work. We need to work at understanding how we are to begin with, how we are connected and turned inwards to do that. And of course, underpinning all of this, as Christians, underpinned by God, the foundation of our marriage together. So think about your connections. Are you side by side? Are you heading in the same direction in your uniqueness? Are you joined by those rungs? Are you leaning in towards one another? Are you turned in towards one another? Make a note of that. Make a note of that before we now step into the world of disconnections, which will be the bulk of what we look at. Just have a moment to think about that, connections, those connections that you have. So just a few minutes to do that. Okay, so let's get underway again then. And that is us having looked at connection there. Okay, so let's look then at what it means to disconnect. And, you know, in my experience, it doesn't take much for a couple to go off track. Distance, distraction, taking your eyes off the ball, whatever it might look like, where two people do not tend to that ladder terribly well, then it can cause an issue. So just think for a moment, take a moment to think about times perhaps when you have had a disconnection between yourself and your partner, or someone who's been romantically special in your life, and write down your thoughts. A couple of minutes just to do that. Okay, back to our ladder then. And here we are, turned inwards, tending to it, aware of it, conscious of it, working on it together, making sure we're on the same page, that we honor our individuality as well as our interdependence. And where two people don't tend to that ladder well, the rungs are going to tumble. One might just drift away a little bit, distracted, not focused, maybe not turned inwards. The other becomes disinterested as well. He's not paying attention, or I'm more interested in my girlfriends. I'm going to spend more time with them. Unconsciously, not focused on, not working on the relationship. And these things can happen unconsciously. And what happens? The rungs don't have support anymore. They fall away. And there we are left with two people who are no longer turned inwards, but instead they've turned out from one another. And unhappiness and sadness exists. And you know, one of the biggest challenges I think for us as Christians is disconnect will happen. But for us as Christians, our faith in God can really be challenged. And our faith in ourselves, our relationship with God can really be challenged. We're Christians. How can this be happening to us? And you bring in the whole question of guilt, of shame, of not being good enough. I think as Christians, that's one of the biggest challenges that we can face, is our own sense that for me to be successful as a Christian, I need to meet these particular requirements of the world, of the church around me. So I think in a loving, caring community, we need to be mindful of the pressures that people are under and the fact that marriages will break. And God recognizes that. And Jesus talks of that. So we want here to have a look in the next hour at more detail to disconnection. So let's crack on then with looking at the whole area of disconnection. And this is where it does start to get a little heavy. So you'll need to, as I said, gird your loins, focus well on the disconnected stage of today. And the reason I'm focusing hard on disconnect is because so often I have seen couples that for whom, when they understand difference between them, and when they accept difference between them, that's when change for the better then comes. Understand, accept, change. So what we're trying to do here in this piece about disconnect is to understand the stuff that causes the tumbling away of the rungs, of the forward motion to fall to one side. So we're going to look at these 5 different areas, which for me have been common areas of conflict for people. So that's why I've particularly focused in on them. And it was, I'm sure, providential that Sade was talking about attachment with me before we came onto this seminar now. And Sade was thinking it would be great to do some work on attachment. And it may be that going forward, we can do some more detailed work on attachment. But for now, I can give you just a brief outline of these 5 different areas and how they can cause disconnect. So let's press on with attachment. And the origins of attachment, they come out of a guy called John Bowlby, who was a psychiatrist. And Bowlby said the bond of love is a safety and survival mechanism. And attachment is a theory. It's a theory of survival. We need to attach. Bowlby argued, we need to attach. We all need to be in relationship, and we need to attach in order to survive. And depending on our earliest experience of attachment with our primary caregivers, that's where our attachment style will be formed. Sometimes we will attach ourselves to unhealthy people, or the primary caregivers in our lives have not allowed us to attach well and safely with them. And that creates what we call insecure attachments. And we'll just look at 1 or 2 of these now. We're actually looking at 3 basic types of attachment going forward from here. So the first is secure attachment. And this will be established for us. We will feel that we can securely go into the world. We can be ourselves. We can attach well in a loving relationship with someone if we've had secure attachment in our early childhood. That was Bowlby's theory. And it is established right at the outset of life. And as someone with a secure attachment will say, I find it relatively easy to get close to others. I'm comfortable depending on them and having them depend on me. You remember that interdependence we talked about in that rung, the ladder? Interdependence. I'm comfortable with intimacy, and I'm usually warm and loving. Note the word usually. We're not always, are we? I don't often worry about being abandoned or about someone getting too close to me. And that last sentence captures what insecure can be about. Fearful of being abandoned or fearful of someone getting too close. A person with a secure attachment style won't be worried about those kinds of things. So someone with a secure attachment, getting comfortably close. It's around 50% of the UK population has a sense of a secure attachment. Can be attuned to their partner's emotional and physical cues and can accurately respond to them. So really aware of them. There's no hidden meaning in them. They are secure in being able to honor what the partner needs and to pick up cues and to address them with them in a safe way. And people with secure attachment style will report high levels of relational satisfaction, very much more able to offer empathy to their partner, and are not threatened. They're less sensitive to threats and negative cues. They're secure in themselves. Does that make sense? None of you can answer yes or no, but if you've got any questions about this, then of course you can raise that at the end when we have question time. So that's one of the three main attachment styles, secure. We're going to look at two others which are insecure, and those are an anxious attachment style and an avoidant attachment style. And think about all of this in terms of how it might cause disconnect between you. You would think that if two people have a secure attachment for one another, there's less chance of disconnect. I would say that's correct. But what about the anxious attachment? This sentence kind of captures how somebody with an anxious attachment style might feel about their partner. I crave intimacy. Note the word, I crave it. So there's a need, a neediness in it. I'm looking for something from someone else. I crave intimacy and find others are reluctant to get as close as I would like to get. I'm often worried that my partner doesn't really love me. Craving intimacy, worry that my partner doesn't really love me or won't want to stay with me. So you feel the insecurity there? And remember, attachment relationship, this is a survival thing. Okay, it's a threat to life if I'm not attached well. People with a secure attachment will not feel a threat as they go through life. But an insecure attachment, they will feel their life is under threat if they don't have that security. You can see in my body language, this is what it can be like inside for someone with an insecure, anxious attachment style. I want to merge completely with another person, and this desire sometimes pushes people away. So what would we see in them? A real sense of being on the edge. There's a primal survival instinct in here, living with a sixth sense for danger. And by the way, these slides, I will create a PDF for Sade to send round afterwards, so that you'll have these to refer back to. But about 20% of the population has an anxious attachment style, super sensitive system, and possess a unique ability to sense when the relationship is threatened. Their antennae are up. They are hyper-aroused at its worst. And they will give mixed messages of love, of needing love. And this is a bit technical from a therapeutic perspective, but there's an activation of the attachment system. You need to look into the theory of this, and I will point you towards a site which is quite good on this, a website. But it seeks to re-establish connection, whereas a secure attachment style would not be trying to establish connection all the time, but the insecure, anxious person will. Are we okay? Is it all right? I need to know we're okay.